I'm not entirely sure where to start, but my ex-husband left me and our two children, then 1 and 2 years old, almost 10 years ago. He just came home shortly after our anniversary and said that he hated me and hated our kids and needed us to leave as soon as possible. At the time, I believed our marriage was happy and healthy. This literally came out of the blue, and I was caught completely unaware. We had no money issues. We were making long-term plans of buying a home and career plans. We were still going on date nights and having intimacy very regularly, so I had no idea where this was coming from. I was devastated, and it took me years to get over this, and I have never received an answer for the reason for his decision. I respected his decision and within a week flew to his parents' home. At the time, my mother-in-law and I were very, very close. I spoke and texted her multiple times a day and always kept his parents up to date with pictures, appointments, and videos of their grandsons. When I first arrived, everything was normal, but that didn't last long. There was a weird tension within the household, and I felt like I wasn't wanted. As I was trying to figure out what to do with my marriage, if this was really over, or if my husband was going through some sort of mental breakdown, trying to figure out how to be a single mother and working out income and work balance, I was also dealing with my own issues with the dramatic change in my life. Within the month of my arrival, my mother-in-law came to me and said that this living arrangement wasn't working and I needed to find another place to live, which I readily agreed to. They were much older, and having two toddlers and another adult within a small space was tight, to say the least. And of course, there was that weird tension. I explained to her that I was actually already looking at some apartments close by and had a job interview lined up within that week. And as soon as I could, the kids and I would move out. Her response was, "No, we mean you need to leave and leave the boys with us." I looked at her, shock on my face, and said that I would think about it. As soon as she left, I called a distant relative and relayed to her what happened. She advised me to leave as soon as I could and was concerned that my father-in-law and mother-in-law were trying to take the kids away from me. With this advice and feeling panicked, I decided to go ahead and leave then and there. I packed as much as I could and left to go to my own family members. My in-laws tried to stop me and take my children, in which I told them they couldn't kick me out and take my children. I asked them to move, and I placed my children in the car first before grabbing our things and left. Almost forgot, my in-laws were the passive-aggressive, controlling type. If things weren't done in the way that they would have done them and how they believed something should be done, they would nag, guilt trip, and gaslight you until you folded into whatever they wanted. This was something that was always a point of contention within our relationship, because even though it worked for my then husband, it never worked for me. They were also the type that never made a suggestion without making plans for it first. So when my family mentioned that they were more than likely in the process of taking the children from me legally, I didn't doubt it in the least. Up until this incident, my in-laws and I had what I believed was a very, very good relationship built on respect and love. I viewed this as a betrayal and worked on rebuilding my life closer to my family rather than my ex-husband's. After almost a year of no contact with my in-laws, I spoke to the same family member about making amends with my in-laws. I stressed that I didn't want my boys to grow up without their grandparents like I had, and even though she was tentative, she agreed I should do what was best. I made the first attempt. We talked it out and pushed it under the rug. We began again with daily communication of videos, texts, FaceTiming at nighttime, and keeping them constantly in contact with their grandsons. When it was time for my ex-husband to take the kids for visitations, it was always his mother that I worked the arrangements with. There were a few incidents in this time period where there were some passive-aggressive remarks and suggestions that I bypassed, secret plans that would be made regarding the children that they would intentionally not tell me about, that I was able to navigate through. Despite this, we were back to saying "love you" at the end of our calls and sending memes and jokes to one another throughout the day. Then came the year that my ex wasn't able to take the kids due to finances. I spoke to my mother-in-law and suggested that instead of flying, we could drive and meet halfway, and I'd be more than happy to drop off the boys for their visit. This was planned in the spring of the year, and the visit wouldn't happen until the holidays. As the day started coming closer and closer, something didn't feel right within me. It just didn't feel right. I mentioned this to a friend, and she had mentioned that I shouldn't feel odd because my ex was able to come. That stopped me in my tracks, and I asked her what she meant. I didn't know it, but she had kept tabs on my ex, where he posted that he was flying in. Again, he couldn't afford it and was excited to see everyone. I called my in-laws, who were already on their way, and straight up confronted my mother-in-law. She was instantly nervous and stuttering, and made the weak excuse that she thought my ex and I had corresponded about this. She absolutely knew that I hadn't spoken to her son and hadn't for over a year. I told her I didn't care that he was coming since it was his holiday, but I didn't enjoy the disrespect that they were hiding this from me. She asked me if I was still meeting them, and I said I would. I drove the 14 hours one way and dropped off the kids, and it was very obvious I was not happy and very angry about the whole interaction. She called her son, my ex-husband, and he called me to try to smooth things over, which didn't do anything at all. I left and allowed them to have their visit, and I picked the boys up 10 days later. The entire time I spent trying to rationalize and reason with why my in-laws constantly behaved the way they did, and trying to keep my emotions in check, but couldn't figure it out. I was extremely hurt about this, and would often start crying about it. I picked up the boys and kept a low-contact profile with my in-laws, which, since we were constantly texting and calling all throughout the days, was very evident that something was wrong. My mother-in-law asked me what was going on, and I wrote her a long email letting her know that I was extremely hurt by their treatment of me, and I was trying to figure out my emotions from that. Her response was to basically call me insane and immature, and that she had no idea what I was talking about. My response to that was to inform her that I had no intentions to keep contact with her or father-in-law and have the children around people that would so blatantly disrespect their mother. A few years later, my ex-husband called me. He rarely calls, requesting that I start reaching out to his mother and allow her to get back into the kids' lives. I explained to him that my decision was firm, and I had no intention of doing so. Even though this interaction was years ago, I can't help but wonder if that was the right decision. So am I the jerk? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. What stands out to me is that every time they are horrible to you, and every time you go back. After the first time, after they wanted to separate you from your children, you were the one who reached out to make amends. You are showing poor judgment here. I'm not trying to shame you, but a lot of this could have been avoided if you had gone no contact and stuck to it. The priority should be your children and their well-being, which you are compromising. Comment 2. Why did you go to his parents' house? I am trying to figure it out. Did you ever think they would pick you over their son? They showed how they felt when they were kicking you out, but wanted to keep the boys. The only reason they have dealt with you has been because of the children. Now for the update. Been a week since the last post about my in-laws and my ex's request to reconnect. So here's the tea. I got a text from my mother-in-law asking to meet for coffee to talk about the kids. Yeah, right. I was super nervous, but agreed to meet at this local cafe known for its pastries. Can't say no to a good croissant, right? I might need it to survive this meeting. So I got there early, hoping to check things out and maybe do a little people watching. Well, my mother-in-law was already seated, looking super serious, like she could have been auditioning for a role in a crime drama. I ordered a coffee and sat down, and immediately I could feel the vibes were off. She started with some comment about wanting to put the past behind us for the kids' sake. I mean, really? You pick a cafe known for its pastries, and this is how we start? She started going off about a plan for more frequent visitations with my ex. I just sat there trying to keep my mouth shut, but I couldn't. I brought up my concerns about my ex's unpredictability, and my mother-in-law just brushed off my worries, saying the boys needed their father. What kind of mother would I be if I just let my kids run into the arms of someone who might pick them up and drop them at any time? The conversation escalated. She accused me of being selfish. Selfish? Pot, meat, kettle. I felt cornered and had to defend my decision to prioritize my kids' stability over her desire to play happy families. Then, out of nowhere, she stood up and said the meeting was over. As she left, she mentioned how disappointed she was in my choices. Like, that's rich coming from her. A few days later, I got a call from my ex asking to see the boys on the upcoming holiday. I hesitated but agreed, thinking it might help the kids. I told my boys about their father's arrival, and they were excited but nervous. I had to reassure them that everything would be fine, but honestly, I wasn't so sure myself. On the day of the visit, I prepared their favorite snacks and set up a space in the living room. It was all very Pinterest-worthy, if I do say so myself. My ex arrived late, like really late. The boys were fidgeting with anticipation, and I was starting to wonder if we should have ordered takeout. During the visit, he was so distant, focusing more on his phone than the kids. The boys tried to engage him with questions about school, but he barely responded. I could feel the vibes getting worse, so I decided to step in. I reminded my ex that the boys deserved his attention, and you would think I had just set off a bomb. He got all defensive, saying he was busy with work and didn't have time. This led to a heated argument right in front of the kids, who looked confused as hell. I insisted the boys should not be put in the middle of adult problems, and his response was to leave abruptly, saying he couldn't deal with this today. The boys were visibly upset, and I had to comfort them, which really broke my heart. Later that night, my mother-in-law sent a text criticizing me for not making the visit better. I responded, explaining that my ex's behavior was not my fault. Then she had the nerve to demand to know what kind of mother I was for allowing this. A week passed with no communication from my ex or my in-laws. It was like they were on a silent retreat or something. Then I got invited to a family dinner at my brother's house for the upcoming holiday. I decided to go, hoping to get some normalcy for my boys. During dinner, my brother casually asked about the boys' relationship with their father. I explained the recent visit, and my brother expressed concern over the situation. This prompted my sister-in-law to suggest family counseling to help navigate these issues. The dinner ended with my brother offering to help facilitate conversations with my ex. I left feeling a little better, knowing that my family had my back. But seriously, why can't his family get it together? Mini update. After the meeting with my mother-in-law, things were tense. The boys were excited to see their father, but confused by his distant behavior. His short visit ended with an argument in front of them, leaving them upset. My brother suggested family counseling, giving me some hope for better communication. Am I the idiot for telling my husband to get his act together or get out? My husband and I have been together since we were both 18, and he was my first real relationship. I love him very deeply, and he's my best friend. However, he has always had a serious anxiety problem that remains undiagnosed. Anytime he's undergoing significant stress or anxiety, he takes it out on me by screaming and breaking things. He's never physically harmed me, but he's broken several objects around our home, including his phone. He says things that are incredibly rude and disrespectful. For example, in a recent argument, he told me, "You hate your mother and you wish she was dead." My mother has very severe multiple sclerosis and is declining rapidly, and I don't think she has a lot of time left. We both work from home, and we work for the same company. I am his superior. We had a serious discussion before he joined the company about how working together would affect our relationship, and he said he could handle it and was excited to work with me. He constantly undermines my authority and refuses to do the things I ask him to do. He says that the work he does is too stressful and that the workplace is disorganized, along with many other hurtful things. For context, this is a small business, and I am second in command after the owner. This company is my passion, and I've worked very hard to perfect our operations. Overall, I'd say our workplace is great. My husband's workload is very normal for our industry. He's also making a six-figure salary despite being in his first year in this industry, which is quite unusual. The only reason he makes so much is that our boss, the owner, considers both of us to be family and plans on giving us the business when he retires. I feel that my husband's attitude towards work is a slap in the face to me and my boss. He says the entire staff is incompetent and that our boss and I are lazy and don't do anything. I tell him that I'm literally running the entire business and have 9 staff members reporting directly to me. I'm working constantly. My boss is very close to firing him, but isn't doing it solely for my sake. His anxiety is primarily related to work. He's a perfectionist and insists that he complete all of his work before ending his day. This is unrealistic in our industry because work is constantly pouring in. Anytime anyone makes a mistake, he flies off the handle, yells, blames me, and shuts down. The same thing happens whenever work is particularly stressful or he's asked to do something he doesn't want to do. I've asked him to go to individual therapy. He'll go once or twice and then say he wants to change therapists. We are currently in couples therapy, but I'm not seeing any change. He's been giving me the silent treatment for more than a day because I asked him to help our staff with emails. He's barely speaking with me and has only broken his silence to curse me out over text. My last straw has been finding out that he's been making moves to start his own business without consulting me at all. I feel that this is incredibly disrespectful because this is a major financial decision and we depend on his salary to pay our bills. I told my friend what was happening and she was appalled at his behavior and worried for me. Telling her was the first time I opened up to anyone about what has been going on. Her reaction has made me reflect on my marriage and what to do going forward. I know I'm young and I have other options. We don't own any property and don't have children, so I could make a relatively clean break. But I love him. He's all I've known since I was 18, and I'm afraid to be alone. But I'm at the breaking point with his behavior, and I'm tired of getting empty apologies after being verbally abused. What should I do? Any advice is appreciated. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Mental health can explain behaviors, but it doesn't excuse them. He's being hurtful. He makes more than enough money to pay for excellent therapy, assessments, and anger management. If he wanted to improve his behavior, he could and he would. He is choosing not to. Do not continue couples therapy with an hurtful individual. Love is respect, and this is not how you show respect to someone you care about. Comment 2. OP, it's time to stop being his mom, his maid, his boss, his guide, and his savior. It's time to put on your adult pants and let him and his anxiety go the way of the VHS trash. You can't drag people along, and some people use their anxiety as a weapon, and he seems to have mastered the technique. It's time, you know it. Good luck. Update me. Now, for the update, 2 days after that post, I feel completely different. The energy in our apartment has shifted. It's like I'm walking on eggshells, just waiting for it to blow up. My husband is still giving me the silent treatment, which he's turned into our new normal. It's exhausting. His phone keeps lighting up with notifications, like a freaking disco ball, but he just ignores them. It's like he's living in his own little world. So, while he's in the shower, I decide to check his phone. I know, bad move, but I just needed to know what was going on. When I look at his texts, I see all these conversations with someone about starting a business. One message talks about needing to get away from the toxic environment at our current job. I mean, really? So after he gets dressed, I confront him. He acts like it's no big deal, just some business talk. But I'm like, why the heck didn't you tell me, especially after everything we've talked about? He raises his voice, saying that I don't understand his ambitions or dreams. Like, excuse me? This is a partnership, not some solo gig. The argument escalates, and he throws a glass against the wall, shattering it. I get it, my reaction wasn't perfect, but come on. The next day, I needed a break from all the drama, so I went to a birthday party for a close friend. At the party, I talked to another friend who opened up about her struggles with a controlling partner. It felt good to talk to someone who gets it. I also got a text from my husband asking if I was coming home soon. When I got home, he was still awake, just staring at the wall like a zombie. He asks me why I've been avoiding him, but I hit him with the classic, "Why are you silent?" He claims he just needs space to think. I can't even right now. A few days later, we went to a family dinner for my parents' anniversary. During dinner, my dad makes this comment about how couples should support each other. My husband just loses it, saying that he feels unsupported in his own home. The whole table goes silent, and my mom looks like she's about to faint. I try to change the topic, but he just keeps pushing, making it worse. After dinner, my sister pulls me aside saying she can sense the tension. I brush it off, but she's like, "You know relationships shouldn't feel like this." Honestly, I appreciate her concern, but I don't need another reminder of my situation. The next day, I decide it's time for a serious talk with my husband about our future. He gets all defensive, accusing me of not believing in him or his dreams. I even mention the possibility of separating if things don't change. He looks shocked at first, but then he starts yelling about how I'm throwing everything away. The argument reaches a boiling point, and I just can't take it anymore. I tell him to leave for the night. He storms out, slamming the door behind him. Alone in the apartment, I start packing a small bag, getting ready to stay at a friend's place. I text my friend, asking if I can crash for a few days, and she says yes. When I arrive at her place, she greets me with a hug. I really needed that. Edit. After staying with my friend for a few days, I returned home to find my husband had moved out completely. He left a note saying he was taking time to figure things out. It's scary, but also a relief. My friends and family have been supportive, and I'm starting to feel like myself again. Am I the idiot for confronting my wife about hidden photos of her male coworker and still feeling betrayed years later? My wife of 11 years and I had been out for a wonderful day with our kids watching cricket. When we got home, I was looking at photos and was aware my wife had taken some of me and the kids too. I spotted her phone next to me, so I opened it to look at photos. We had never been secretive with our phones, so I didn't give any thought to secrecy or privacy. Looking through recent photos, there were several of her in our garden looking seductive and partially undressed over the preceding few weeks. There was a series of 4 selfies taken over a period of about 10 minutes the previous week. One in a bikini frowning, one in a bikini smiling, one with her bikini top off but lying on her front smoldering and her breasts partially covered, no body part on show, and one over-the-shoulder selfie with her pants off so you could see her behind over her shoulder. Having never before dug through her phone or even wanted to, my instant reaction was one of excitement that she was feeling sexy and had taken these. I got excited that there might be more and more explicit pictures in her hidden folder. I opened up her hidden folder to find about 16 photos of one of her male work colleagues, various photos of him in his garden smiling, one without a shirt on, and one where he is in her car in work clothes and she has taken a photo of him smiling. There were no other pictures in the hidden folder, just him. I got a huge shock and was fairly instantly crushed. I shut the phone and put it down, immediately feeling guilty for looking in the first place. I kept quiet for a day or so while I stewed on it. I got some evidence of the photos of her but didn't think to get the photos of him. As I thought about it, I convinced myself she was cheating on me and that I needed to confront her as we were likely going to need to divorce. 2 days after seeing the photos, I confronted her about it. Initially, she denied knowing anything about it. She kept this up for a while. She claimed she had no idea why or how these photos were in the hidden folder. Prior to this incident, we had an okay intimacy life. However, she never initiated intimacy and was quite passive and prudish, never really offering much when I tried to mix things up or find out what she liked. I had always just assumed that she was more sexually repressed than me, and I loved her so much and was so certain she was committed to me that I totally accepted our different levels of intimacy desire. Having found the photos and confronted her, we had lots of long conversations with her, ultimately apologizing for hurting me, but not acknowledging that she had done anything wrong. She still claimed to have no idea why or how the photos were in a hidden folder. The conversations were long and quite exhausting, and after some weeks, I basically accepted her apology and we agreed to work on our difference in intimacy desire. Over time, life, kids, and routine returned to something more normal. However, every day since then, I still think about the betrayal I felt. Our intimacy life is effectively exactly the same as it was before this. We still get along well most of the time, and we have 3 wonderful kids who are none the wiser. In the 3 years since, there have been 2 further periods when I have not been able to ignore my hurt any longer. The last time was in October last year, when I felt obliged to go to a work event where the colleague she had saved photos of was also going. I told her I felt really uncomfortable, but I agreed to go. Afterwards, I was unable to think clearly, and we had to revisit things again. At this point, over 2 years after the initial incident, she changed her story about why she had put the photos in the hidden folder, admitting she did feel attracted to him but that nothing else had happened. She stated her attraction was based on how loving he was with his family, and how much he talked about them at work, and how much he focused on them. I'm writing now because I still can't let it go. I love her deeply and don't want to lose her. However, I don't think she has any intimacy desire for me, and may be stringing me along, though I'm not sure why, as I have calmly given her multiple opportunities to walk away or change the relationship. I don't think she has done any more photo, text, or emotional cheating, but she remains very cool and reluctant with me sexually. It's really hard to be objective and make sensible decisions. I'd really welcome thoughts from people who have been in a similar situation. Have I been cheated on? Am I right to feel betrayed? How can I get her to open up and be honest about why she is sexually cold with me, but sexually adventurous in her own photos and in the stored pictures of her colleague in the hidden folder? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Of course, you're right to feel betrayed. The fact that she lied to you and then didn't admit anything wrong means you can't trust her. If you can't trust her, how can you know if she is being in any way truthful? It sure sounds like she cheated on you. Why else are 2 married people sending each other photos secretly? Her attraction was based on how loving he was with his family and how much he talked about them at work. Oh, please. It took her 2 years to come up with this. This whole situation would mess with my mind, knowing I couldn't trust my partner and that she doesn't respect me or the relationship enough to be honest. Cheating in a relationship can sometimes be salvaged with a lot of hard work, but when the person won't even admit the truth and be transparent, it's impossible to progress from there, in my opinion. How can someone apologize but not admit what they did? Probably the time to decide what to do was 3 years ago when it happened. I'm amazed you lasted this long. Sometimes people stay together for the kids. Maybe that's what you are both doing. Rough situation, mate. Best of luck with it. Comment 2. Did she at least admit that she was in a conversation where they were swapping photos? That she sent him photos in return? And did she explain what the chat was? I know you can't fit everything in a post, but I just can't see why the focus is on the fact she hid them when the real point is that she had them in the first place. She was sent them, and she obviously had similar photos of herself that she certainly sent. Yes, this is cheating, and you have never reconciled. It does not matter at all how much time has passed, only that you have never really confronted this and allowed it to be shoved into a corner and fester. You need to act. Decide whether you can ever forgive her for the betrayal and the subsequent years of lying. Decide if she can ever deliver the trust you need and rebuild this relationship. Nothing else matters except that you need to act. Now for the update. I'm pretty sure my wife is cheating on me, and I don't know what to do. Part 3. So 2 days after the last update, we went to my in-laws' house for a family barbecue. My wife was in a good mood, singing in the car and playing with our kids. For a moment, everything felt normal, like we were just a happy family. Her brother Mark was there with his girlfriend, and everything seemed fine when we got there. We ate a ton of food, drank some beer, and the kids played like crazy. All the adults were having a good time, except for the fact that something felt off with my wife. She was laughing and having fun, but I could tell she was a little on edge. I guess I was too, because I was just waiting for something to happen. During the barbecue, Mark casually mentioned running into my wife's coworker at a bar a few nights ago. I felt a surge of something in my gut but kept quiet. I pretended to enjoy the food and drinks and smiled like nothing was wrong. I just kept thinking, why now? Why here? Mark didn't know, but this was the last thing I needed to hear. A little later, my wife stepped away to help her mom with something in the kitchen. That's when I overheard Mark's wife talking to him about my wife's friendship with the coworker. My ears perked up, and I listened in on their private conversation. From what they said, it sounded like there was a lot more to this story. I was curious, so I asked Mark about it. I was like, "So what do you know about this coworker?" He shrugged and said he heard some rumors, but didn't think much of it. Yeah, well, I was thinking a lot of it. Later that night, after the kids went to bed, I confronted my wife about her interactions with the coworker. She insisted it was nothing. I tried to change the subject to the barbecue, but I wasn't having it. I pressed her, demanding more details about her relationship with him. She finally admitted they had gone out for drinks after work once, but nothing happened. Yeah, right. It felt like she was just giving me the bare minimum. I was frustrated but didn't want to lose my cool in front of the kids and family. So I decided to investigate further. I asked around at her office, casually inquiring about the coworker, pretending to be interested in work gossip. I didn't want to raise any red flags, so I acted like everything was fine. That's when a colleague mentioned that they often saw my wife and the coworker having lunch together. This news hit me hard. I didn't know what to think or do next. The following weekend, I invited my wife to a family dinner to discuss things openly. We didn't get a chance to talk about it during the week, and I wanted to see if she would open up more in a different setting. During dinner, I casually brought up the coworker again, trying to keep it light. She grew defensive right away, claiming I was being paranoid and insecure. After dinner, I suggested going for a walk outside to talk privately. We ended up on the porch, away from everyone, and I laid out everything I had heard. That's when she finally confessed that there had been flirtation, but she insisted nothing physical occurred. She said she was just feeling lonely and that it was harmless fun. I didn't even know how to respond to that. So we agreed to go to couples dinners with friends to rekindle our connection. Fast forward a week, and we attended a birthday party for a mutual friend. I saw my wife laughing and chatting with the coworker, who had also been invited. It felt awful. I couldn't just stand there and watch, so I pulled my wife aside and asked her to step away for a moment. In a low voice, I expressed my discomfort with her interaction with the coworker. She promised to limit her contact with him and assured me it was just a party. Yeah, right. I didn't believe her for a second. After that, I decided to take a break from social gatherings for a while to focus on our relationship. We planned a weekend at a cabin, just the two of us, wanting to reconnect away from distractions. During the getaway, we spent time talking by the fire and reminiscing about our early days together. It felt good to remember the good times. By the end of the weekend, we agreed to prioritize each other more and put in the effort to rebuild intimacy. I returned home with a clearer mindset, ready to tackle whatever came next. But the nagging doubts were still there, and I didn't know how much longer I could ignore them. Edit. I didn't expect such an overwhelming response. Many asked about the coworker, and I want to clarify that he's married too. My wife claimed nothing physical happened, and they both insist it's harmless flirting. I've spoken to her colleagues, but nobody knows more than that. I'm still unsure about everything. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.